Hi, this is Vince Van Patten. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Greg Ehrbar is with us for another look at recently released DVD and streaming titles that we think you'll find of interest. Greg, of course, is a two-time Grammy-nominated and multiple Addy Award-winning writer for television, animation, advertising, and publishing for Disney, Warner Brothers, and Universal. He is also co-author, along with Tim Hollis, of Mousetracks, the story of Walt Disney Records. You can enjoy Greg's animation spin column twice a month at cartoonresearch.com. What do you have for us?
Jonny Quest, brought to you by... stopping because that's the way it is on the new Blu-ray from Warner Archive, which is really, really cool. Jonny Quest has always been really cool.
Now,
but when you hear it, it's really cooler.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was Mike Road one of the voices on Jonny Quest?
He was the voice of Race Bannon.
Okay,
also,
all right.
His real name is Roger Bannon, but it's Race is his nickname.
Mike Road was one of many contract players at Warner Brothers during the high peak production era of Warner Brothers Television in the mid-50s, early 1960s. He had a recurring role on the Roaring Twenties in the early 1960s, and as was the case with contract players at the time, they would cast him from one show to another. And so if he wasn't starring in Roaring Twenties, he would be guest starring on 77 Sunset Strip or Maverick or whatever else was in production. He had a show in the late 50s, and I think this is before he signed with Warner's, called Buckskin. And the reason why I know this is because in one of the episodes of Maverick that he wrote and directed, Montgomery Pittman cast Mike Road as a character named Buckskin. So there was a little in-joke in that show. But he did that, and then in the tail end of Maverick's original run, Mike Road played a Dandy Jim Buckley-like character named Pearly Gates.
Huh.
Yeah, but I was not aware that Jonny Quest was a Warner Brothers show.
Well, it might as well have. If it was live action, it would have been. It would make a great live action show. It was really innovative for its day and extremely expensive. It's one of the reasons that it didn't stay on very long. All of the Hanna-Barbera primetime shows were expensive, much more than live action. In fact, our friend Steve Beverly proved that on Facebook. He shared a clipping with the budgets of shows, and the average price of a Flintstone half hour was more than a live action of another half hour. And Jonny Quest was even more pricey because they had to spend more time doing that line work that Doug Wildey created. It looked like a comic book, and it was very much like a pulp novel, a kid's adventure, very much like the 40s radio shows, Jack Armstrong and I Love a Mystery and those kind of shows that my dad actually loved listening to. And Mike Road, by the way, my favorite role that he played was Tony Millionaire on I Dream of Jeannie.
Oh, that's right, that was him. And How Do You Beat Superman?
Yeah, and that was funny because Jeannie wanted to make Major Nelson jealous, and she said, I have a date. And he said, oh, really? Well, what's his name? Tony? And Tony what? Tony Millionaire? And it was like, oh, yeah, right. And then the doorbell rings. I'm Tony Millionaire. He also was the face of Fireman's Fund for many years.
Oh, okay, yeah, okay, I remember that.
So he was Race Bannon for that show, and then in the 80s, they I don't know if he was well enough or whatever, but he was replaced by Granville Van Dusen, who did quite a good job, and he was another journeyman actor on a lot of our crime dramas and mysteries, and he was on those kind of shows. He was on Quinn Martin kind of shows too, and then after Granville Van Dusen, it was, in fact, to this day, if they do a Jonny Quest, it's an actor named Michael D. Hanks, who is one of those voice of God kind of announcers who narrates the Star Wars read-alongs now also for Disney.
You mentioned Granville Van Duzin as we take a look at the Jonny Quest and the Blu-ray release of the original Jonny Quest, which is now available through Warner Brothers Home Entertainment. You mentioned, we'll get back to Mike Rose and the original in just a second, but as long as you mentioned Granville Van Dusen, I saw him in a play at the Gary Marshall Theater a few years ago, opposite Michael Learned. I can't remember the name of the play, although for some reason I think Southern Comfort is the play. But it was a sort of a two-person romantic comedy about people of a certain age who fall in love. And he was quite good in it.
Granville Van Dusen was very much a presence on 70s and 80s television.
Yeah.
He was quite often on Murder, She Wrote and that kind of thing, and in a lot of commercials. He was a very common presence on television, and he's still around doing things.
Yeah.
I did not know he was doing Race's voice, but he does a very good job in the 80s, and we'll talk about that one, but we'll start with the 60s. And Mike Road was also brought to you by, and PF Flyers was one of their sponsors, and there is a commercial for PF Flyers animated by Hanna-Barbera on the set, and there are all the episodes included. There's not tons of them, but it was a primetime show, so there's more than 17. There's about 20, 23, 24, and they have John Stephenson as Dr. Quest in some, and then Don Messick. I don't know the reason why Don Messick took over. My guess is that Don Messick could also be the voice of Bandit, and that way they saved a little money. And they certainly compensated John Stephenson by giving him roles in practically every Scooby-Doo and every Josie and the Pussycats. Has played every villain. He did a lot for them. But he only played it, and he played Dr. Quest on a record album as well.
John Stephenson, the voice of Mr. Slate on the Flintstones,
yes.
Correct?
And he also was Mr. Slate on the Flintstones. And then, of course, Tim Matheson as Johnny.
Yeah.
Which to this day, he was on the podcast of Gilbert Gottfried, and he talked lovingly of playing that role and going to the studio and working with all these great actors, because there was a lot of great character actors on Jonny Quest as well, some of which didn't do a lot of cartoons. For example, there was, Kathy Lewis. Kathy Lewis was on Hazel. She played Hazel's annoying sister-in-law, and she was a radio veteran. She was on My Friend Irma.
Uh-huh.
She played Irma's more level-headed girlfriend, Jane, her roommate. And she was an excellent drama and comedy actress. And she had a very, very good diction, very crisp way of speaking. And she played the original Jade, who was this very exotic, mysterious sort of Mata Hari kind of character who had this thing with race. This sort of, what's the deal with her and race? They obviously had a thing. And she appears in a few episodes, but she was sort of on both sides of the law in a way, and that was a very adult kind of character for those days. But this was a primetime series. It was a little more sophisticated. Jonny Quest got a little bit of flack for being somewhat violent. There was gunplay. It was edited, I believe, later. It became a stickler for. There were people who were questioning some of the stereotypes, which there were because of the date it was made, 1964. So the villains were generally sometimes stereotypical of various lands. But there were also some really cool character actors behind the scenes. Henry Corden is another one that did a lot of voices.
Henry Corden, the second actor to play Fred Flintstone. Yeah.
And I have a theory about that, too. I think Henry Corden did such fine work on Jonny Quest that I think that he came to the attention, perhaps, of Hanna-Barbera, perhaps Barbera, because he did a lot of the voice direction, that may have helped him get the Fred voice. He was already singing for Alan Reed in some things and doing some of the records as Fred. But Jonny Quest gave him quite a bit of work. So people like Sam Edwards and various people not necessarily always doing the more funny cartoons were on this. And the stories were exciting. And they had a James Bond feel to them. There was Dr. Zinn, who was the ongoing villain, who was always creating trouble. And it was, for a kid, especially then, nothing on TV like this. Because before this, the best we could do was Clutch Cargo, which was a very limited animation series with live-action mouths in the faces. And there just wasn't. This was pretty lavish stuff. It doesn't seem that way to what we're used to for modern animation, because a lot of stuff is done overseas. There's a lot of CG. This is stuff that was done domestically and at a great cost, all hand-drawn. And when you look at it on the Blu-ray and you see the color variances and the art direction and the perspectives, backgrounds, you can say all you want about the limited animation, but if you take a look at the artistry, the layouts, that kind of stuff, it's pretty cool. And, of course, the music by Horde Curtin is some of the most admired background music of the studio. There is a soundtrack CD of Jonny Quest that La La Land put out. And it's very, very impressive when you hear this music without the dialogue and sound effects. It has a very hot jazz feel to some of it. The theme song itself, if you stop for a moment and think, okay, this is not a cartoon piece. This is a very complicated orchestral piece that he challenged the musicians with. Could they play this that fast? Could they hit those notes that fast? It's a difficult, challenging piece of music. So they were aiming real high with Jonny Quest, and it kind of does show, especially in the Blu-ray.
The original Jonny Quest animated series from the 1960s is available on Blu-ray through Warner Brothers. The soundtrack of the original Jonny Quest series is available on CD through La La Land Records. If memory serves, our mutual colleague and friend John Burlingame does the liner notes for that La La Land release.
Yes, and our friend Taylor White was involved, and master Disney animator Nick Ranieri was involved. A lot of people worked long and hard for years to get that onto CD, just tracking down all of the pieces of music to make it happen. We were very passionate and lovingly bringing those things to it, because it's great music. And when you, like I say, if you played it for someone and didn't say what it was, they'd say, "Where'd this come from? Is it Henry Mancini? Is it from some, So no, it's Jonny Quest. Oh, really? So sometimes it's a cartoon gets short shrift.
Well, but, quote unquote, it's a cartoon, but for what you're telling me, it was a quote unquote Saturday morning cartoon, but it sounds like there was a lot of prime time sensibility in putting together this quote unquote Saturday morning cartoon. Well,
it actually was a prime time. It was made for prime time.
Okay, I stand corrected.
And ended up on Saturday morning, probably with edits here and there, because there was lots of explosions. As a matter of fact, I got to know a Hanna-Barbera artist by the name of Ron Diaz. And he did a lot of background. He did color styling, worked on films as well as television. His name's in a lot of credits. And one of the series he loved working on the most was Jonny Quest, because he would do the explosions and the puffs of smoke and the fireworks. And he said it was so much fun to create those things. And Jonny Quest was loaded with it. And that stuff is pricey, because that stuff has to move at a frame rate that requires more cells, more things to move. You can't, if you watch a limited animation cartoon, a lot of times the action takes place off screen. If somebody bumps into something or something crashes, watch carefully. It usually happens off screen and you hear it, and then they cut to it and the little car is broken already, or Yogi's already, his little helicopter's already crashed. It's kind of like the Addams Family. They look out the window and say, "Uncle Fester, watch out with the dynamite."
Because it's less expensive to do it that way than to stage that on camera. You mentioned the explosion and the big animated puffs of smoke. As soon as you said that, Greg, I could picture that in my head. It's these thick clouds of smoke that the best way for me to describe it off the top of my head is that those thick clouds of smoke coming from the explosion reminds me of The Thing from the Fantastic Four, because it's that kind of brick layered thick smoke. Oh yeah, yeah. And it's if you stop the frame, you could just see just how much detail they put into the color and the way they choose different colors even for the lines, just to give it that much more dimension, because they know they might be limited in certain ways, but they might say, okay, let's use a different paint for the lines just to give a little bit more pop. Things like that's how they get around various cost savings and things like that. That's what was so cool about those cartoons. Gosh, there's one with an eyeball that's like a spider that's a like a visitor from space kind of thing. That's real cool. Mm-hmm. There's another one. Sometimes the characters die on the show, not the leads, but there's a mad scientist who has a pterodactyl that he commands. It's called Toru the Terrible. I don't want to give away the ending, but he meets a doom. There's mortality on the show. It was made for kids and adults, and they had to tone it down a little bit afterwards. And we'll talk about all the various iterations here, because Jonny Quest is one of the Hanna-Barbera stars, and there are constant efforts to bring him back. The original Jonny Quest is available on Blu-ray through our friends at Warner Archives. We will talk about some of the other iterations of Jonny Quest that are available on home video in a few weeks on TV Confidential. In the meantime, Greg will be back at the top of the hour as we play part 2 of our conversation with voice actor Michael Bell. We hope you'll stay tuned for that. In the meantime, take a quick time out, then we'll pay tribute to Dorothy Fontana next on TV Confidential.
Attention sports fans, now you can watch every football game you want all season long without leaving your home with Dish for about $50 a month. Compared to your cable bill, you can save almost $600 a year. Call right now and sign up for Dish and watch every football game you want. With Dish, there are no boxes to pay, plus get free installation as soon as tomorrow if you call now. And with Dish Anywhere, you can watch your favorite sports and channels on your smartphone, tablet, or laptop. Be one of the first 100 orders right now and get a free voice remote. Don't miss a single football game all year long and save a ton of money. Get a free voice remote and free installation as soon as tomorrow. But you gotta call All American Dish right now.
800-296-1251. 800-296-1251. 800-296-1251. That's 800-296-1251.
Hi, this is Rhonda Shear, and you're staying up all night or day with TV Confidential.
Buying or selling a home can be one of the most stressful things we'll ever do in life, but it doesn't have to be. And no one knows better than our friends at Front Porch Realty Group. They're a community of realtors serving the Northern Bay Area of California that cares about their clients as individuals first and foremost. Whether you're a first-time buyer or looking to lease or sell your property in the Bay Area, Front Porch Realty Group will help you through this important transition by providing you with the right information for your situation while lessening the pain. They also work with a network of realtors throughout California who provide the same high caliber of customer service. Call Front Porch Realty Group at 415-886-7411 for a realtor referral near you. You can also visit their website, frontporchrealtygroup.com, for more information on the services they provide, including upcoming workshops and seminars. For more information, call 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com. Front Porch Realty Group. They'll find the solution that works best for you.
Uber is the mobile app that connects you with a driver for immediate transportation. Request a ride at the tap of a button and you have a driver curbside in minutes. You can choose to be driven in a black car, SUV, or you can choose Uber X, the low-cost Uber for a ride in a hybrid or mid-range car. Payment is seamless and cashless, billed to your card on file with no need to tip. Enter the promo code TV Confidential after you download the app to receive a free first ride up to $20. For more information, go to get.uber.com/go/TV Confidential.